Excellent. Okay, so welcome to Just Fruits Kitchen Intuition Workshop. Tonight we are going to be making Greek chicken with lemon herby wedge potatoes. This is a dish that my family used to make a lot. And one thing I want to highlight is I don't think I've ever made it quite the same. I'm always using my intuition, keeping potatoes in the oven longer, using a little more or a little less of different seasonings on the chicken, but this is the basics. And what Just Roots Cooking Workshop is trying to do is teach us and share with us skills of how to use our intuition when we're cooking. So even though we have recipes, I ask you not to hyper focus on the recipe. The things that I'm going to be doing today with the amount of foods that we have in our kit is Irene will be recording in the chat. So if you didn't hear or you forget how much I'm using, you can always look at the chat. We'll also post that online on the YouTube. Great. So seems like someone's struggling a little bit with sound. Maybe Irene, you can help with that. Can everyone else hear? Irene, you can hear me good, right? Okay, great. We're going to try to figure that out, Robin. Good luck while we're doing that. So, all right, folks, let's go through what came in our kit this month. So we had a little extra funds. Just so y'all know, we try to purchase almost everything locally. That's where our funding source comes from. So that's why these kits are often seasonal. And just keep that in mind if you ever have suggestions for what to do in a future workshop. We got these little leaf greens, so we just decided to make this chicken dish with a salad. We have about 2 pounds of red potatoes. Now, traditionally, I like to use russets when I make this dish, but these are going to be fabulous. But again, we're just using our intuition. They might want to cook a little bit longer. We got a beautiful head of big garlic. We're going to use quite a bit of this today. Not local, but 3 lemons. Super important part of this dish. It's going to be really strong and acidic and bright. All right, we have some cayenne pepper and some smoked paprika. The paprika is from Kitchen Garden Farm. They have the best spices I've ever used. Their Calabrian chili flakes, which we've had in our kits, are really wonderful. This Maplebrook smoked feta is from Vermont. We just wanted to throw something extra on top of the salad. We're just going to crumble this up and put it on. You can leave it out if you don't want any cheese, but I think it's going to pair super well. So that's it for vegetables, and we also got some chicken in our kit. Some people may have gotten bone-in. Most people have gotten not bone-in chicken breasts. I removed mine from the bone. I left the skin on, and we're going to work on the chicken first, so you can get that out if you're waiting. Some things to provide on your own. I've got some extra virgin olive oil. Any kind of olive oil will do. Oh, I forgot, you have yogurt in your kit as well. I'm using non-dairy, unsweetened yogurt. You can use the one that's in your kit or any plant-based yogurt. If you're plant-based, I have a dairy allergy, so this is what I'm using. It's totally fine to substitute. We'll use about a cup of that. Some other things that are in our kit are oregano leaves. Yours probably came in a pouch. And then something that is not necessary, but might be helpful for a little extra crunch is using some kind of a teaspoon of flour on our potatoes today. So I have gluten-free all-purpose. Cornstarch could work too. Regular flour is great. Salt and black pepper, of course, are wonderful. And then some things that I got out here today, just when I'm making my salad, the things that I like to have with this dish, with the chicken, the potatoes, the salad. Hummus is really great with it, but I got out some pepperoncinis, pickled pepperoncinis, some olives, sun-dried tomatoes, marinated artichokes, roasted pumpkin seeds. Those all would work really well on the salad too. Good, I'm glad everybody's got volume now. Wonderful. In terms of supplies, I am going to use a couple cutting boards, one for the chicken, And then a couple knives so that we're not using a knife with raw meat. You can also wash your knife in between. If you have a lemon squeezer, that might be helpful. You can always do it by hand. Measuring spoons, we're going to pretty much use a teaspoon of everything today. Keep it simple. You'll want to use a half cup and a whole cup for measurements today. We'll be using a half cup of olive oil and a whole cup. And then we've got a bowl. This is going to be for my chicken marinade. Something else you can use is a Ziploc bag. First, we're going to get the chicken marinated and stick it in the fridge while we work on the potatoes. So that marinade has some time to soak in. And then another liquid measuring cup. And some kind of sheet pan for roasting your potatoes, big enough to give them a little bit of room. All right, I think that should be it. Let's get started. Okay, so we have about 2 pounds of chicken here, and what I'm going to do is slice it into small cubes. So this is going to both make the marinade process go faster and the cooking process as well. And I'm going to start off, if you have skin on yours, some people will, some won't. I'm going to remove the skin from this recipe. You can certainly keep it on if you'd like to. So it's pretty, once you've deboned it, if you had to do that, it's pretty easy to get the skin off. Kind of just likes to peel right off. All right, now you're also going to want to look for any excess fat. So that's going to be the whiter part of the meat, and you can just gently glide your knife along that fat to get it out. You can also separate out the tenderloin. You don't need to do that, but it'll help us with slicing. My dog hears the noise of the chicken. He's excited. So I'm going to show you up close this little white bits of fat, chewy tendons. I like to kind of get that out ahead of time. So I'm just using my knife to kind of lift and peel it off. Just like that. There's actually not too much fat on this chicken, which is really nice. So I also cut my finger today, so I'm trying to keep the Band-Aid off of that, which is why I'm moving a little slower than usual. Okay, so the chicken looks beautiful to me, and I'm just going to start cutting it into sort of bite-sized pieces. So it really doesn't matter how small you go here. I like to just think about what would be nice to chew, what would fit nicely on a fork. And in the meantime, if you're getting more pieces of fat or tendon, you can be cutting those out. Take your time with this. Really, really helps to use a sharp, sharp knife during this process. You can also do this recipe with chicken thighs. Usually I cook chicken thighs a little bit longer than breast, take a little longer to cook. You could make a version of this in the oven. This one's going to be on the stove top. So one thing I didn't get out was a pan that we're going to be cooking our chicken in, and you can use a cast iron. You can use pretty much anything that can take a pretty high heat. Okay, so just finishing getting this chicken cut up. And for those of you who might be ahead of me, you can get it into either a Ziploc bag or a bowl, and you want to be able to put a lid on that bowl. So I like to just use a regular metal or stainless steel bowl, and then I put on a plate as a lid. You could also use some plastic wrap or something like that. I wonder if you can see my dog sitting there very patiently, like a very boy. He knows what I'm cooking. He likes chicken. almost done over here. It's hard not using your pointer finger to stabilize the meat. It's the new thing. All right. So I'm going to get all that chicken into a bowl. And we're going to get that marinating. You can go ahead and wash your hands if you've done this part, because the rest will use mixing spoons, so you don't have to keep your hands dirty. All right. Okay, so for our marinade here, let me get down another cutting board. Want to use a fresh one, or you can wash the one that you had. Oh, thank you, Robin. He is a very beautiful boy, isn't he? Just right now, well, you can do this on your own time, but now is a great time to do it. We'll set our oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're going to want to get that preheating. And I like to put it on roast if you have that setting. So that'll give it plenty of time to preheat before we get our potatoes mixed up. Okay, so let's start off by using a cup of yogurt. As I said, you guys have I think the Maplebrook yogurt. I'm using non-dairy yogurt. Either one works just fine. Measuring out roughly a cup. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we are. Mixing that in with the chicken. We are going to cut a lemon in half. And sometimes I have to cut it in more than a half to use it in my squeezer. This is a pretty big lemon, so I'm going to cut it even more than that. And for this one, we're going to use a whole lemon juiced. And folks, you can totally, if you're into lemon, another suggestion I have is grate some of or zest some of that lemon peel into this marinade, and that'll be delicious as well. So if you find yourself with a little extra time, go ahead and grate one of your other lemons. We're not going to use the peel for anything. It's much easier to do when the lemon is whole. If you don't have a lemon squeezer or anything like that, something I suggest doing is kind of go at the inside of the lemon, breaking up the segments with a spoon, and that'll make it easier to squeeze the juice out. All right, so I'm really trying to get all the juice I can out of these. We want it super duper lemony. Oh, that one squirted up. Excellent. Another thing that I've added to this marinade is actually vinegar itself. So vinegar is a good substitution, and it's not just a substitution. You can add in a teaspoon or two of vinegar in addition to the lemon if you like really vinegary chicken. All right, I'm almost there. And folks, we're not going to finish this whole recipe tonight. The potatoes will likely still need a little cooking before we get out, like usual with our recipes, but we'll do our best to get as close as possible. Okay, we're still going to use this. You can give it a little rinse if you're using one. We'll come back to it. Okay, so for the chicken marinade, we're going to use a teaspoon each, 1 paprika, 1 teaspoon of our cayenne pepper. That's a lot of cayenne. So if you don't like hot, cut that into a 1/4. I think the yogurt really, because it's creamy, helps bind to some of that heat. So it's not as hot to me, but use as much as you would like. And then we'll use a teaspoon of oregano, salt and pepper to taste. So I'm going to do a whole teaspoon of cayenne. You certainly don't have to do that. Oops. Yeah, we might get some coughing here with all the pepper in the air. Paprika is not going to be spicy, so that's just regular, like bell peppers, smoked and dried. God, the smell of that. It's just amazing. Teaspoon of oregano. You can even put 2 teaspoons if you're an herb person. Use your intuition. You're gonna do a couple teaspoons of olive oil just to thin out this marinade a little bit. You can use extra virgin, you can use just regular, you could use avocado oil or whatever you have, just some kind of cooking oil. 2 tablespoons. And then salt and pepper to taste. I'm just gonna roughly measure this just to tell you what I'm gonna put in. All right, I'd say I'm doing about a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And 3/4 a teaspoon of salt, maybe a little less, maybe closer to 1/2. Everybody has different salt needs and salt requirements, and some people can't have as much salt. I love salt, probably a little bit too much, but do whatever is best for you. And then at that point, we're just going to stir all of this in. So all of the ingredients are good to go. They're ready. You know, if you want, you could even put in your old lemon, the lemon that you already juiced could go in here. You're just going to remove it before you cook it, but you could even infuse your marinade with that. All right, so that's going to sit in the fridge and marinate until we're ready to cook it. What I like to do is just set a plate on top of my bowl. All right. Time for the potatoes. So you might want to get your station a little bit cleaned up. I've got some olive oil, spices everywhere. We are going to use measuring stuff again, so just keep that around. And let's get on to making potato wedges. Okay, so you can either cut your wedges, put them into a bowl, stir them with everything going on them, or you can do it directly in the sheet pan. I tend to like to do it in a bowl just to make sure everything's even, but if you want to do less dishes, that's fine. Okay, so we're making wedges, which are, there's a million ways to cut a potato, but I like to cut them in half, kind of go at an angle twice. And I'm going to hold this up so you can see how big these are. It's going to be different with every potato with the different lengths. Well, let's see, I'm in front of the camera now. So that's about how big I did. They're kind of like nice apple slices. That's about the length of a finger. So I just went in half and I went twice more, and I've got my beautiful wedges. And I'm going to do all 2-ish pounds of these potatoes. So try to cut the longest way of the potato at an angle down. You might do 3 cuts or you might do 2 cuts depending on the potato. You can make it lie flat. 1, 2 wedges. Because these are a little bit larger wedges, that it's going to take a little longer for the potatoes to cook. So it's important to try to get them as evenly cut as you can without over stressing. Just because we want that cook time to be similar. So if I cut a really thin potato, it might get burnt over the 40 minutes that it's going to be in there. Does everybody get the wedge idea? Renee, thanks so much for putting those directions in the chat. That's really helpful. 2 more potatoes. And again, the same thing goes with the lemon zest here. If you want some extra lemon action, you can certainly just add the zest of 1 lemon to this bowl. One thing that might be helpful to have, because, oh, did I forget? I did forget to put garlic in the chicken marinade. So I'm glad I remembered this. I'm going to use a food processor to process my garlic today. It's going to go in the potatoes and the chicken. Sorry if you put that away already. You can also do it by hand, but I'm going to do 3 cloves-ish for the chicken. So I'll do some of that. And then the remaining, we'll do 3 more cloves for the potatoes. So I'm going to do 6 in all. And I'm just going to do that all at once in a food processor. Take your time if you have to cut it. You have plenty of time. And these are really big cloves of garlic. So if you're not a huge garlic person, you can cut that down. Maybe in half even if you want to. But if I see 3 cloves, I'm going to put 3 cloves. I love garlic. So I'm doing 6 in all. 3 for my potatoes, 3 for my chicken. Some of them are, wow, they're beautiful. Like elephant garlic. You can cut the ends off, but if they're not super hard, and I sometimes just leave them on the root ends. This is helpful too for getting the skins off. If you have a garlic press, you could use that too. Where you can just mince it up nice and small. We want a lot of surface area so that the garlic infuses pretty well in these in the chicken marinade at least. Now, well, I'm gonna mute you while I do this for a sec so you don't have to hear it. 1 sec. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to use about half of that garlic in my chicken marinade. And the other half will be for the potatoes. So normally when I'm roasting potatoes and I'm going to add garlic, I would not put garlic in at the beginning. And that's because it has a tendency to burn. But because this recipe has so much liquid in it, we're actually going to do that. We're going to put it in right at the beginning. It's a little bit different than most. And go ahead and give that a stir. I still have that old one that I used. Sorry about that, guys. I'm so glad we didn't forget this key. Back in the fridge. All right. So now in our potatoes, coming back to them, we're going to do a tablespoon of oregano, so quite a bit. That's my oven heating up. The juice of 2 lemons, but we're going to save a little bit for the salad to dress on top of the salad. So mostly the juice of 2 lemons. We're going to use some olive oil, and we'll talk about that in a second. A little bit of flour or cornstarch, 1 teaspoon, and then some water. And salt and pepper, of course. Okay, so the garlic's all good. You're going to use quite a bit of oregano in this dish. Actually, sorry. We're going to use the oregano not yet. I like to put it, you could put it in now, but I kind of like to put it in more when I take the potatoes out to flip them because it has a higher chance of burning, but it doesn't taste bad a little bit crispy. So you can do what you like. I'm going to wait until they've been in the oven for a little. And when I turn them is when I'm going to add the oregano. But we'll get our lemons juiced. Feel free to use the zest of the lemon. A bit of lemon. And you, again, you can even throw these into the baking dish when you're done juicing them and just remove them before eating. That's totally fine too. Get more of that flavor out, which I'm probably gonna do. So I'll just put them on now. It's so good already. So if you're doing this directly onto the pan, that's fine too. Just make sure you're able to stir everything up on that pan. Okay, and then we're gonna add our garlic. Three whole cloves of minced garlic. Now our recipe calls for 3/4 a cup of olive oil, which I know is a lot. I think you can get away with a 1/4 cup at minimum. I'm going to do a 1/2 cup. It's a lot of olive oil, but we want a lot of liquid, and these are slow roasting potatoes. So I'm going to do 1/2 cup. You can certainly do less. I know olive oil is expensive. You could try other oils if you'd like to. And if you're just not, you don't want to consume that much olive oil, the important thing is that there is enough liquid at the bottom of the pan so you could use more water or add water later. So I'm doing a whole 1/2 cup of olive oil. I did extra virgin. And then 3/4 a cup of water. Salt and pepper to taste. I'll start with 1 teaspoon of salt, see how that feels. And folks, you can also use some of the same spices. Yeah, so I'm going to use a teaspoon, which might seem like a lot. If that's too much for you, you can do a 1/2 teaspoon. And I'm going to do a 1/2 teaspoon pepper. So what was I just saying? Can't remember. Well, must have not been that important. Oh yeah, you can use those spices. You can use the smoked paprika on these potatoes. You can do it when they come out of the oven. You could also use any of your favorite flavored spices. A lot of Middle Eastern spices would go good with this. Caraway seeds would go really well with this. So I'm not quite adding the oregano yet. Wouldn't be horrible if you did. All right, I have salt, pepper, olive oil, lemon juice, potato, garlic all in here. Let me just double check I've got everything. And we're going to hold off on the tablespoon of oregano. Let's get this onto the baking dish. Make sure to get all that garlicky goodness out of the bowl. You used a bowl to stir everything up. then what I'm doing right now is trying to get the potatoes evenly set on the bottom of the pan so that it's not overlapping each other. Okay, and then we're gonna set a timer. I like to set it for 30 minutes and you can check on them. It's not going to be ready yet, but we'll start with 30 just to check. Turn this up. All right. 30 minutes going in. Perfect. Now I'm going to take a couple minutes to get a little cleaned up because I've made a mess over here. Now we can prepare our salad in a very simple way, or we can make a simple vinaigrette depending on the ingredients you have at home. My suggestion is if you only have the supplies that you have here, you could use, a quarter clove of garlic because these are so big. Mince it really fine. Use some olive oil, blend that together, or use a whisk or a fork. And then use some, if you have a little extra lemon juice left, you could use that. You could also use vinegar if you don't have that for a basic salad dressing. I think we'll have time to do that really quickly. Dijon mustard is also really wonderful in a salad dressing. Let me see if we have time. Yes, we do. Okay, so the potatoes are in the oven, the chicken is still marinating, and we do have time to prep our little salad and salad dressing. I like to make my salad separate from the dressing just because if I don't eat it all, the greens aren't going to go bad so fast. But, we'll do a little plating here. And I'm going to mince some more garlic. There it is. To make my little vinaigrette. We just put up a video on our YouTube. It's called Make Your Own Salad Dressings. And the video just goes through some kitchen pantry staples that we like to keep around to make really any kind of dressing that we'd like. The recipes featured are a classic Greek dressing, what else is on there? There's a tahini maple miso dressing, a traditional Caesar dressing, and a ginger carrot dressing. So if you're interested in that, you should check out that video. It's on our YouTube channel where this is going to go. Basically right now I'm mincing the garlic as much as I possibly can. If you don't have a food processor, it might just take a little time to get it all minced. You could also use a mortar and pestle and grind that garlic so it's super thin. Or if you just love garlic and you don't mind getting a bite of garlic in your salad dressing, that's fine too. I used a pretty tiny clove here, and folks, if you're confused about what we're doing, this just because we have a little extra time, we're going to make a dressing for the salad that's sort of like a Greek flavored dressing. I'm using mostly the ingredients that are in our kit, maybe some vinegar instead of lemon juice if you don't have an extra. So we'll get that. It's a little dressing container. This will have time to soak too, which is great. And absorb some of that garlic flavor. Use some extra virgin olive oil. It's about 4 tablespoons. I'm going to get vinegar. You can also use lemon juice. You could do about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice or similar vinegar. One of my favorites for Greek dressing, red wine vinegar. I'm really big into vinegary salad dressing, so I'm going to do 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, 3 teaspoons. And then really you can use a dash of Dijon mustard or leave that out, that's fine. I just did one squeeze, probably like 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then some oregano, which I don't know where I put it. There it is. And I'll probably use like a equivalent of a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. Let those leaves kind of rehydrate in there. Then you can stir that up with a fork or a whisk, and it makes a perfect little sort of Greek salad dressing to go with your Greek chicken. So when I prep this salad, I'm going to put, I'll show you, a few pieces of the crumbled feta on there, maybe some olives, tomato or cucumber if you have it at home, roasted red peppers, you can buy those in a jar, some olives. If you're doing this by hand, you really want to make sure it gets, you emulsify it. And you can add in some salt and pepper to taste. A pinch. And then give it a try and see. Use your intuition. Use your taste buds. Do you want it more vinegary? Do you want it more olive oily? Would you like if there's some sugar or sweetness in it? Is it bright enough? Do you need more vinegar, more lemon juice? This is great. Okay. So when those potatoes come out of the oven, we're going to add a teaspoon of our flour, and we're going to add a tablespoon of our oregano. And I'm hoping that'll happen while we're still in the class. I might take them out a little bit early just so we can do that together. I'm just going to get my salad ready to go, and then we'll cook our chicken. I just want to make sure they had enough time to marinate. Sometimes it's hard timing these classes out to exactly an hour, which we do try to do while sourcing local ingredients that fit budgets for our kit. And I think we've done a pretty good job. And mostly I'm thankful for everybody's patience and suggestions for dishes. We do send out feedback forms. You can check your email. Those are really, really helpful for us. If you could fill them out and give us suggestions. Oh my goodness, the texture of this is absolutely beautiful. So you can crumble it into more natural pieces by hand. And I'm going to serve my chicken right over the top of this with the potatoes next to it. I can't even see what I'm doing. There we go. Crumbly feta on there. Great. So that's going to be ready to go. Okay, so as I said before, we can use a cast iron for cooking our chicken. You can use a nonstick pan, but you want to go a little bit higher heat, so keep that in mind. One thing that I find is helpful is tongs for this process, because I want to lift the chicken out of, I don't want to pour in all the entire yogurty marinade sauce. So I want to leave it on there, but not all of it. So tongs are great. We can lift individual chicken cubes out. Excuse me, I have some burps a little bit. We're going to put in 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil at the bottom of that pan. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I'm going to put this on medium, high heat. There's about a 6 on mine, and I'm going to get my chicken out. And I'm using just like large cast iron. Ideally, I can fit all the chicken at once. If you can't, you can always do it in batches. And we're going to get that olive oil nice and hot. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon. Yeah, that should be plenty. Tablespoon to 2 in the bottom of that pan.
Hey, Brooke, there's a question on the chat about, do you think this recipe will work with tofu? Have you ever tried?
I've never tried it with tofu, but you know, our go-to recipe for tofu, which I'm happy to share, is tofu piccata, which is sort of like a breaded tofu that's made with nutritional yeast, lemon zest, um, and flour. And then I use gluten-free flour. And then you kind of fry it in butter. The tofu, I use fake butter. And you put in capers and like more lemon and vegetable broth. So I basically, long story short, I think it would work out. I don't know how you get it crispy first. Like maybe you put the tofu in like a flour batter like you would in this piccata recipe, and then you can add in the other ingredients. I'm going to send you that recipe and maybe we could try that out somehow and do a little test of it. Because I think, and what other meat suggestions could be used with a yogurt marinade? I mean, I think really not necessarily a yogurt marinade, but like anything that's served, any meats that are served with like tzatziki are so good, like a kebab, lamb, beef, chicken are all great with yogurt marinade. Good question. Okay, so we're heating up. I'm going to wait for that pan to get quite warm. And again, I've got my tongs, so I'm just going to be pulling the chicken cubes out of the marinade like this so that I'm not dumping a huge amount of marinade in there, but it's okay that they are coated. And because we're going to do it like this, you might want to do it in batches. If you have a lot of excess liquid, you can lay down a paper towel or just have a plate or something ready to catch your finished chicken. We've got about 18 minutes left on our potatoes. As I said, we might take those out a little bit early, sprinkle them with some flour, add our oregano, but hopefully I think we can make it pretty close. And basically you're just going to cook those until they're totally crispy and wonderful. One thing to note, if your pan really starts to dry up at the bottom, if you make this recipe again and you doubled the amount of potatoes or you're using a different kind of potato and you're seeing drying up at the bottom of the pan, you can always make more of this like lemon sauce, or you can just add water. We're steaming the potatoes. I don't know if you've ever had Greek potatoes when you go out. They're like so moist and dense and heavy because of this olive oil and water mixture and lemon. So it's like a delicacy. I'm excited for everyone to get to try it. Okay, I think my olive oil's hot enough. I'll do a little test here with a piece of chicken. Yeah, I got the sizzle. It's gonna be loud for a second over here with my sizzling, but I'm gonna lay out all my chicken, or as much as I can fit. And I'm on medium high heat. You might get a little splattering. But it looks like I'll probably do mine in 2 batches. I'm just using like a little sort of metal spatula. Okay. You're gonna stir those so the chicken gets to cook evenly. Medium, high. All right. I'm gonna see if I can find this tofu piccata recipe and put it in the chat quick. It is I just love it. I can't stop eating it. Here we go. I just use regular onions instead of shallots because I never have shallots. And anyone's curious? All right, make sure to continuously stir that chicken. We're gonna lose some of that extra liquid as it continues to simmer and bubble. I can smell all my spices in there. It smells so good. Yeah, so I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but if I were to use a different cut of chicken, like chicken thighs or chicken legs, I would probably do this whole thing in the oven. I would put the marinade in with all the marinade in with the chicken, and then roast it maybe at like 350 and until the chicken thighs are done. And one really nice thing about chicken thighs is you almost can't overdo them if they're braising in some kind of liquid, like they don't get super tough like chicken breast does. So if you ever want to try that with chicken thighs, which are often a cheaper cut of meat, or chicken drums. And they're still cooking away. If I can bring my phone over, that would be so nice to show you my pan, but it's all attached. I should. Make sure when you use your salad dressing before you pour it on your salad to give it a nice, good stir. Now, folks, if you don't want to serve this chicken right away, you don't want it to get hot, you can pull it off a minute early, do your other batch, and then right as you're about to serve those potatoes, you can reheat that chicken together to get it up to temperature. You can have a nice warm chicken. This would also be a great recipe for grilling. You can marinate it maybe for a little bit longer, because if it's on the grill, it's not going to cook in as much of its juices. So marinate it for like an hour or two, and then throw that chicken on the grill. It'd be great in the summertime over a big bed of greens. Chicken's getting close to done. All right. Now, you can always cut a piece of chicken in half and check it on the inside to see if it looks done. Generally, my rule of thumb when I'm doing this is oftentimes when I'm sauteing a chicken in the marinade, that marinade pretty much gets absorbed by the chicken by the time it's done. But yeah, when you check a chicken, you want to see clear juices coming out, and it should be all white when it's chicken breast. So you can certainly cut it in half and take a peek. And mine looks great. And my marinade's pretty much almost gone here. Skip to the bottom of the pan. If you're doing what I'm doing and you're doing 2 batches, I would suggest putting down some new olive oil. Another, half. half tablespoon maybe, because you'll already have some in the pan. All right, and I'm gonna remove that chicken. I'll probably put this on in a minute to reheat it. Okay. Back to heat here. Dash of olive oil again. Then I'll get the rest of my chicken on. Actually ends up being quite a bit of meat. Amazing. A lot of extra marinade in there. So some other recipes that a lot of Indian dishes use a yogurt marinade for chicken. So nice. It's like, it doesn't look yogurty whatsoever. It just has like amazing moisture. Yogurt really gets taken up into the tendons, or not tendons, the fibers of the chicken. Looks so good.
Hey, Brooke, Robin has a question in the chat, like if you already pre-cooked the chicken, could you use marinade and just heat it up?
Yeah, yeah, if you already, but the chicken didn't marinate, and I guess if you're heating it high enough, it wouldn't matter if you used it to marinate the chicken. Yeah, I think that would be fine. Kind of treating the marinade like a sauce. I think that would work. I would definitely heat up the marinade on the stove so that the like garlic gets cooked and everything like it does with the chicken. But that's a great idea. Thanks for sharing that, Robin. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm setting up this area just so people can see my potatoes for the next step. I put them in for 30 minutes, right? And I still have 8 minutes left, but because we're getting on that 30 minutes, but we're getting close to time. So I'm gonna pull them out so we can add the rest of our spice. We want to do the oregano and the flour. You can use, again, cornstarch or whatever kind of flour you have. Just going to use cornstarch, and I'm going to do 1 teaspoon and then 1 tablespoon of oregano. Why do I keep losing my oregano? There it is. That's why. 1 tablespoon. There's a lot of oregano in this dish. And then 1 teaspoon flour or cornstarch. And don't forget to stir your chicken, because I almost did. I'm getting too hungry. Got my pot holders, just to be a little extra safe. I'm gonna set it on top of a cutting board. Lot of steam in there, so be careful when you open your ovens. This looks beautiful already. Starting to see some crisping on the side of potatoes that isn't in the wonderful lemony broth. So basically, you can use whatever tools you can. We just want to get these flipped around. And you can do this before, it probably makes sense to put your spices in first. And we're going to cook these potatoes really until the sauce has evaporated. Or the like lemon water, olive oil has mostly evaporated. And sometimes what I do as I'm cooking it is I will tilt it and gather some of, once you get really low, right now there's plenty, I'll gather and pour out some of that sort of broth, and I pour it back on top of the potatoes. So the tops don't get burnt or anything like that. But let's go ahead and add in your oregano. You can do, you know, a half tablespoon, a whole tablespoon. If you love oregano, like I do a whole tablespoon. And then 1 teaspoon of flour. Try to get that as evenly mixed as possible. So I like to kind of do this. I tap the top of the measuring spoon. It gets all the way around there. And give it a good stir. You can use tongs or whatever you got. They smell so good. All right. So these are going to have quite a bit more time. You know, they're already going to be soft and cooked. So that's, if you're too hungry, you can take them out. They're just not going to be crispy. We're really going to keep doing this until all of that lemon and olive oil has evaporated for the most part. Continuously, if you are able to, it makes it amazing if you can drain some of that out and pour it over back on top when it starts to get low. That's going to go back in, and I'm going to reset my timer probably for another 20 minutes so I can check on them in 20 minutes. But keep an eye on them if you can. And this chicken's about done. If you're in a rush, you can always turn the heat up too, but you're going to want to keep a close eye on it. It's already at a high temperature because we're trying to steam off that liquid. But that is, you can certainly do that with caution. Beautiful. Almost done. And so, yeah, like I mentioned, probably the way I'm going to do it is have my salad with my chicken on top. You can put in whatever other vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, olives that you might want. Chicken on top of that, a little bit of dressing, and some wedge potatoes on the side. It's now 5:59, which means we're pretty much at time. Any estimate of how long to cook the chicken in the oven if cooking at the same time as the potatoes and the chicken was cut into small pieces? Can we email the links that were included in the chat? We would, yes, we can email the links included in the chat, but I only know the chicken or the tofu piccata one. Was there another one sent for Renee?
Yeah, I will make sure that I give you all of them.
Okay, well, I can certainly pass that along to Kyle for the folks who attended today to send out in an email. What was I saying right before that? I can't remember. Oh yeah, how long does the chicken take in the oven? So the problem I have with answering that question is when I put something else in my oven, it adds like 20-25 minutes to whatever the other, if I have two things cooking at once. So I think it's the best way to know is to use the thermometer and check the temperature of the chicken, or to cut the chicken open and check the middle to make sure the juices run clear and the chicken is white throughout, not pink when you have breasts. Thighs are even trickier because you will still have pink. Renee, what would you say for chicken breasts in the oven while potatoes are in there? Do you have a sense?
No, I was gonna suggest the same. When I go out of the recipe, I will use a thermometer to make sure that it's well cooked. I'm not sure because it's gonna be steamy, and you know the cooking process is gonna be a little bit different.
I think the best to be safe and just double check it. But yeah, I mean, if I don't want to get anyone sick, but if I had to guess with breast, I'd say like can't be more than 40 minutes. But please check. Okay, guys. Well, thank you all for joining so much. I'm going to be here for an extra minute or two if anyone else has questions about the potatoes And I hope you all get to enjoy your dinner and it's delicious. And then please do give us recommendations for recipes that highlight spring local farm available foods. It would be great to do something with asparagus. Seems like that's a favorite of everybody's, so maybe we could do an asparagus dish. But when you fill out that form, we are just dying to get your recommendations. We've picked so many recipes out, and it's so nice to have like people who come to our classes be choosing what they are.
Thank
Um,
you.
thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. There's my timer. Just gonna reset that. Still here if people have questions. Thank you for joining us again. I think we can end the recording.